Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Chess.com Global Championship Finals. The last games of the semifinal round literally finished 2 minutes ago. I was sitting right here ready to go. I wasn't so much on the broadcast team today. We all have had rest days. Today kind of was my rest day. I will be back in the championship booth starting tomorrow and the day after that. I've also had an opportunity to change. I was feeling a little bit sluggish, a little bit under the weather. I've actually been sleeping terribly here. I don't know why. Usually I sleep great in hotels, but something about this bed or something has been very, very bad. But you don't care about that. You care about semifinals, folks. It's Hikaru Nakamura and Wesley So. More on that later. It's Anish Giri and Nihal Sarin. It's tied 2-2 in both matches. It's basically a best of four. If it's tied after the 4 games of Rapid today, we are going to play an Armageddon game, and I've got some games to show you. Today was devastating, heartbreaking, also tremendously joyful for some, and some are going home. I'm picking things up in game number 5, or game 1 of day 2, between Anish Giri and Nihal Sarin. Anish Giri once again faces e4 knight c6. Yesterday, he got a dreadful position here against Nihal, who surprised him. This is a very bold move against Anish Giri, because you know Anish prepared this overnight. And Anish plays a classical approach, plays queen to d2, shoves the knight back to where it was, and just plays the most route 1 approach possible. Bishop to h6, he's going to play long castles, and the attack is about to begin. This is the most direct, confrontational way of playing against this sort of paired setup. Now, Black plays the move bishop to g4 because he doesn't want to get his bishop blocked in, and then he will obviously create his own counterplay on the c file and on the b file as well. And Anish Giri here ignored everything and played the move h4. Just an indication of very naughty things. He would like to play the move h5 at some point, getting his rook involved as the attack rages on Nihal Sarin's king. Nihal plays the move knight bd7, showing absolutely zero signs of urgency. And here Anish Giri uncorked some of the most savage stuff I have ever seen from him ever. All right, in any of the years I've seen games that he's played, he plays the move h5. h5 hangs the h-pawn in 3 different ways. Now, taking it with the g-pawn is not really one of those ways, because white can play queen to g5, and very bad things will happen to you in all likelihood with this bishop on g7. Now, yes, black has knight e8, and there might be slightly other ways of attacking, but this is just very, very, very bad for black. There is either knight h5 or bishop h5, and black's structure stays intact, but Anish just chucks a full pawn. His rook has now been activated. Now he gets rid of the dark squared bishop, and then he busts open. This is crazy. Look at this move, e5. That move doesn't even make any sense because the knight doesn't actually support the pawn, right? So Nihal's like, what a dumb move. This guy just gave me another pawn. I'm 2 pawns up now, and he's got nothing else. Yes, he does, because Anish Giri now takes on c6, threatening that knight. And what's going to happen here is the queen and rook stare together down this way. And when the queen moves, the rook is going to attack the queen, which is why Anish Giri now plays the move rook takes h5. Good lord. If you take that with the knight, then I'm going to get your knight, and I'm probably going to be a bit better in the endgame. But if you do it this way, I have knight takes e5. I'm still hitting you here, and when you do this, and I check you and I go here, I get your queen. Now, I get your queen for 2 rooks, and in fact, Nihal has a 2-point advantage. But Stockfish, as you can see, thinks white is better. So, I think this was one of the most disrespectful, shocking, stunning pieces of preparation. Disrespectful in like a competitive way, just like a savage, all right? Very respectful in other ways. Piece of preparation demonstrated by Anish Giri, and he just goes locomotive. He protects his king, and he says, all right, my queen is now going to hunt these 2 pawns. Nihal's horses ain't doing nothing. Look at my pieces getting out. I'm going to reroute my knight to the center of the board, and slowly but surely, I'm going to start picking off the pawns. There goes one. All right, the second one, I'm going to get it to knight c6, queen on a7, knight to d8. Why do I even need that pawn? Look at my queen and my knight going together to the f7 pawn. Knight f7, so that when the rook is hit, the queen hits the king runs, Anish grabs and takes everything. He literally, oh, by the way, never too late to throw the game away, all right? Nihal Sarin, very tricky. Queen d8 check, and just a merciless beatdown in game 5 by Anish Giri, who takes a 3-2 lead. What an unbelievable game. Just breathtaking. Now, would that mean that that's it for Nihal? I mean, Nihal has been put away. It's 3-2, and now Anish is going to stabilize. Well, we have an invitation to play a kind of mainline position. Queen's Gambit declined, Ragosa Nimso. Nihal plays Bishop F4. This has been played. This is like a London Queen's Gambit. Normally, we don't see these moves together, right? You got to go either or. But this has been played recently, and the idea is that white takes on d5. Now, here, black can play in a very stable way by just doing this and c6 and bishop d6. And in fact, in hindsight, probably Anish should have done that. Instead, Anish goes into the best move according to theory and plays very aggressively and gets his knight pushed around. But this has been played recently, this pawn sacrifice variation, as recently as the game Ray Robson, Hans Niemann in the US Championship. And all this stuff has happened before. Now, in this position, what black should do is most likely just play bishop e7 and castle. I think Anish didn't like something there and played knight d to e7, which is already a very weird move. The idea is to put the knight on f5 first, but that's wasting time. Nihal allows Anish to do whatever he wants and then says, well, what about your knight now? Yes, you can go to h4, but when this trade happens and I send you back, you've lost valuable time. So now if you play the move castles, which by the way, you still can play, I have queen e4 waiting and it might not be mate, but this is going to be very unpleasant. I have a huge attack raging this way. And clearly Anish had done something incorrect because now he starts going a5 and Nihal's like, dude, you're never castling. Like, look at me. Look at me right now. You can't because one of us is in Belgrade and the other is in Toronto. But now the machine here gives equality. But remember, Anish is up a pawn. So it's 1 point of play back to Nihal. And it's really difficult for black to play. And Anish just immediately can't deal with the pressure. Tries to solve his problems immediately. Now, just so you understand, if a move like g5 gets played here, black plays g6 and black never loses this game because white's entire attack has been stopped. Now, of course, you still have to play chess. But gh5 is the problem, and yeah, Nihal actually is just able to castle, and look at this position. Yeah, just look at this position. I mean, Anish just can't move any pieces. He just has no moves. So he goes here. That's not a hanging of a rook. I mean, it is, but then bishop e6 would happen, and some very nasty things going down to the a2 square. So Nihal's like, that's cool, but I don't want the bishop. I'm going to attack the rook. Now, here he could try to, like, take the rook, and then maybe trade queens. It just, you know, don't hang your knight. But no, Nihal's just like, no, just go away, please. And Anish is just in huge trouble. Now, there was a moment here that Anish could have sacked his queen. Okay, he could have played like this, given up a queen for a rook and a bishop, and actually the game is far from over, but probably it is over, very much so. In fact, it's not far from over. You know, we're speaking in loops here. But instead of that, yeah, we have d3, and Nihal just takes, guards his queen, and then Anish tries to get a little exotic here with this move knight c2, trading off the knights, but for like the 47th time in this game, this doesn't happen. And my man Nihal just ends things here with no questions asked. Bishop h6, dynamite strike. And that's just it. I mean, Anish played this game without 8 points of material. He never got to move either of these pieces. The game is over because you cannot take. I have rook g8 maiden coming, and frankly, you cannot guard anything. I'm just beating the king down. Look at this. King was stranded in the center of the board on his home square with m8 on the board, and it's a story of day number one. On day number one, Anish destroyed Nihal in game one, which happened today, and then Nihal fought back in game two and won a clinical game. This time he didn't win a clinical game, he just completely obliterated Anish. I mean, these dudes are like, this is like an epic Dragon Ball fight. I didn't watch Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z. I mean, these dudes are just blowing each other away to other planets. It's just unbelievable. Now, they stabilize the ship. Ow! I tried to reposition myself and I hit my knee on the dresser thing that extends so you can pull it. That really doesn't feel good. Anyway, my pain does not matter. The pain of these chess players does. So, on game 7 out of 8, they made a draw. And game 8, they also made a draw. Finally, a little bit of stability. And yesterday, we had draws from positions of strength and weakness and so on. Today, they were just very solid. So 4-4. Nothing to choose between these guys. Nihal bids 14 minutes and 15 seconds for the Armageddon, so he really wanted white. Essentially, he's saying, I will take black, but only if I have 14 minutes on the clock. I want white. Anish bids 12:57, meaning I will take black, but only with 12:57 on the clock, it's time for Armageddon. White has 15 minutes. He bid 14-15, but that's to play black. He won or lost or whatever. Nihal gets white because he's had some success with white. And he move orders Anish into a d4 game. Now, Anish could have played knight f6, but d5, and now we have this, and the move c3. The move c3 is specifically designed to prevent black from playing the move c5 against the London, because dc here is not as good of a move. So what you do with c3 is you hope black goes here, and then you do this. And now you get a better London slightly because the bishop has been blocked. You get a better version. And if black plays the move c5 on move 3, you actually just take. And there are exceptionally crazy lines here that are very theoretical. But if black knows what he's doing, which Anish probably does, he's going to be, all right. So we have e6. And Nihal here plays a move that I've never seen in my life, which is obviously not a bad move. But the move b4 here is the main line. He plays bishop to e3, just defending his pawn. And then he plays b4. So his bishop on a completely dumb square is simply going to walk directly into this knight, which it very much does. And now it has to go back. And Anish just has absolutely no problems. He will spend the remainder of this game either seizing control of the center or at some point relying on a5 and b6 to break up the pawn structure. So really just a completely harmless line in a long game. But in a rapid game, things are very different. So we have the move b6. Now here, white could play the move b5. All right, hoping that this knight moves and to shove the pawn forward, but then bishop c5 would be played. And if you play like this and try to win the knight and say, oh, I've won a knight, yay, then bishop f2 is apparently very strong, and this position is apparently totally fine for black, which is just completely nuts. Now, yeah, that doesn't happen. We have h3, so h3, the knight goes to e5. We have captures on b6, captures back on b6 with the pawn, and castles. And here, apparently, black is just better. Like, black just trades, puts the bishop on f6, and despite being a pawn down, all of this activity and staring at white's position is, a computer loves it. I mean, computer is just simply salivating. Knight e5 hits the bishop, looking to damage the structure again. The bishop goes back, and now you have either bishop a6 or bishop d7. Now, for reasons I don't exactly understand, and he did not play the move bishop a6. I mean, it looks like just a very nice move. Well, actually, looking at this, I guess there is b5. So, yeah, actually, I forgot about that. Honestly, just looking at this, I thought rook e1 was forced, in which case, yeah, that kind of makes more sense. But b5, I guess, computer likes it, but well, bishop b7 is, yeah, that's not very human. To allow b5 and just argue that that's an improvement to black's position, very strange. Okay, Anish plays bishop d7. I think I solved my own question. And puts the bishop here. Now, queen d7, bishop e3. Nihal wants to attack another pawn. Black has the option to defend the other pawn with his queen. Black has the option to defend the other pawn with one of his rooks. And here Anish Giri plays a move that really nobody saw coming. He plays the move rook fc8. And he chucks the second pawn. He says that pawn does not matter. All right? Because these pawns matter, and I'm going to attack them, and I'm going to not allow Nihal to pressure me throughout this game. Now, what's basically going to happen here is black is going to create this very powerful blockade. White is going to have to relinquish the blockade and get rid of it by chucking a pawn. So now we have this position. Now, this position is eternally better for white. Why? White has an extra pawn. Any endgame is going to be better for white. Any pawn endgame is just winning for white. Rook endgame is probably a draw. Bishop endgame, probably a draw. One pawn is not enough, especially when the structure is so solid. What's the problem? We're playing Armageddon. What's the problem with Armageddon? No increment. So the players now are about deadlocked on the clock. Nihal now has to just shuffle the pieces, bleed the clock down, and make it very practically difficult to defend what otherwise is an equal endgame. Now here, Nihal plays a little bit nervously, trades down to this 5-on-4. This is a draw. This is not what Nihal had to do, but there is enough life in this position that he can still pose some potential practical problems to Anish. I apologize. Why did the eval bar go away? So we have g4. We have king f6, right? King g6. h5. There we go. One pawn has been swamped. It is now a 4-on-3, but they both have about 6 minutes on the clock. And this game is worth $50,000. Do you realize that? If Anish holds this endgame, he makes it to the finals. The finals, 100K goes to the loser. If you get knocked out in the semis, it's 50K. This endgame is worth $50,000. You have played some endgames or important games in your life? None. More important than this one, $50,000 on the line. We have shuffling. Time is coming off the clock. D5, split pawns. Still a draw, but definitely a little bit more to this, all right? If white gets E and F, aka one of the similar pawns, then this is just no questions asked, probably just a draw. However, what happens to Nihal is he finds a way, way patient, there we go, and we get to this. Now, this is potentially winnable because this is a passer. And if you find a way to support it the right way, you're going to win. For instance, if White's king just marched and then got the pawn there, this king would be shielded away. The king needs to be on the short side. The short side is here. You could maybe argue you can be on the F-file, but you got to be in that vicinity. You get pushed out this way, you're never going to be able to win this game. Shuffling continues. All right, we have king F6. He's unable to pry the king away. The king is shuffling. At some point, Nihal will have to play the move G5 check because he's going to have to make it possible for his king to run forward. G5 is most likely coming. There it is. So now the white king is going to look to infiltrate via here, but black is playing excellent defense thus far. There is nothing. King F7. All right. Rook C1, rook there. Now the black king is cut off completely, the white king is cut off completely, but king E7, there is king G2, and rook B3, and now rook H6. And right here, he needed to go back. Right? He had to go back to F7. Why did he have to go back to F7? Well, because rook H7 and that king, right, can't really live there. You give a check, the king at least can come up. So, Nihal tries again. Now he tries to bring his king forward. And Anish Giri here had to keep the king on G7 and F7 because by coming forward, the first time he tried to stand up for himself, that black king, he got checked. Not only did he get checked, he gets forced back to E7, where we just talked about he couldn't end up. And suddenly king G4. And while you can prevent the infiltration, you cannot prevent this. And now the king has a path to G7. This king is barricaded away, and Anish Giri resigned on move 104 of the Armageddon, as Nihal Sarin clinched a finals berth and a minimum $100,000 prize. Devastating. Just simply a devastating defeat. A shocking one, still a great run, and what a match. I mean, good lord, what a match. Just what a match. And it came down to a blunder on the 100th move. They had 2-3 minutes on the clock, but it's a very tough endgame, and there were plenty of practical chances, and Anish basically had to continue to do nothing. He had to play rook c1, maybe. If the king goes to g4, then rook e1, and even if the king does make it to h5, the black king can always slide over to g7, and white, as close as white gets to making progress, you always give a check, but it's so hard. It's so hard to spot that, and Anish Giri fails to do so, and Nihal Sarin is your first finalist, which takes me to the match between Hikaru Nakamura and Wesley So. It was drawn 4 times yesterday, and not only that, it was drawn the first 2 games today. It's 3-3. They've drawn their first 6 games, and the E4, E5s do not stop. We started thinking they just want to play Armageddon, and I was saying that the closer it got to the Armageddon, the variance actually favored Wesley. So who was going to take the risk, right? Maybe they both thought they were beneficiaries of the Armageddon. Hikaru ends up playing a 4 knights because he just could not find a way to crack the Rui Lopez, and I guess he just didn't want to play in Italian. He did try a Scotch earlier, but it didn't work. And instead, he goes for this 4 knight Spanish, where black chucks the center pawn and wins back the E pawn for the D pawn, but forces white into this passive position. Look at black's position. I mean, it is spectacular. Even though white gets the castle, all the black pieces are staring at white like, yeah, get out. I dare you. You know? Like, come on. Black's position here is like a road rager, you know, just screaming at you to get out of the car. He's like, I dare you, get out of the car. You know what I mean? Like black's just standing outside ready to fight. How is Hikaru going to untangle here? Well, Hikaru thought he's getting practical chances for himself, so it doesn't matter as ugly as the position might look for now. He's still a pawn up. Right? At the end of the day, he's still a pawn up. He did this against Lenier Dominguez. That's exactly how he beat Lenier. If you remember that match, he took the pawn, he defended. Well, now he kicks out Wesley's pieces. Knight f5, knight b4, and he says, all right, we got bishops, we got knights. Here is the position. This is what I'm going to beat you in, Wesley. And this is the best position Hikaru has had the entire match. He kicks out both bishops to their very passive squares, plays knight to d2. Wesley tries to fight back over on the king side. Hikaru offers a trade. Wesley's being forced into very passive situations here and is a pawn down. Knight c3, bishop e6. I mean, Hikaru's position just looks very nice. But bishop f7, are we going to repeat moves? No, rook e4 defending himself. Bishop g6. All right, rook f4. And now look at this very nice trick. Bishop has to go back to e8 once again. HG, and just very stable. 4 pawns versus 3. Wesley plays bishop to d6, attacking the rook. The rook slides over. Bishop e5, nice and central move. And now knight ce2. Also, knight d2 would have been good to free up the rook. Maybe f4, f5, maybe d4 in the long run. A lot of different possibilities here for white. Knight ce2 played, though, and now Wesley played this nice move, g5, a clamp. And suddenly, Hikaru's rook found itself in a little bit of an uncomfortable situation. And Wesley essentially offers a draw here. Okay? Wesley offers a draw. Now, Wesley could play on with rook h8, but I think that this quick shuffle of a piece would have been a draw with rook e4. Hikaru sacks the rook for the bishop. The unstoppable force finally met the immovable object, and Hikaru decided, I've had enough of these damn draws. I'm going to try to win. He sacrifices material, damaging Wesley's pawn structure, but the problem is Wesley gets in there with his queen and his bishop. Look at this backwards bishop maneuver, seizes control of the diagonal, and forces a queen trade. And suddenly Hikaru's aggression with rook c5 backfires. Wesley drives the pieces to get the g-pawn, does so, loses a pawn of his own, and that f-pawn's going, but Hikaru's not done. I mean, it's not over. Knight df6. The pawns of Hikaru's are going. The king is centralized. It's anything but over here. In fact, Hikaru finds a way to get to the f-pawn. Bishop g4 looks good, but after this is actually a draw. Because this endgame is a draw because of the promotion square. So Hikaru gets super close. Wesley notices that and instead goes for this endgame where he wins the pawn. And the craziest thing is, there are absolutely winning chances here with the move a5. But Hikaru chooses not to play on at all and just resigns. He chooses not to play on at all here and calls it a game. But he didn't, in the long run, he would have probably lost, but he might go knight e4, and there's some various tricks. Knight c5, the king is getting close, and so on. So it's not over, but he resigns. a5 played, and Hikaru resigns the game, and Wesley So just takes a 4-3 lead. This is unbelievable. Wesley So just won. And now Wesley So has white. And not only does Wesley So have the white pieces, I apologize, I had a lot of these games from the Hikaru perspective. I pulled these up from his history. We're going to look at it from white's perspective. Wesley plays d4 in this game, and Hikaru, needing to win, takes a massive risk. Not only taking a massive risk, Hikaru's just completely lost after like 9 moves. Just straight up completely lost. Crazy. Queen e2, b6, and I believe the move knight g5 here was just winning for Wesley. Like knight g5, bishop b7, and e6. Like this. Just game over on the spot. That's what the commentators were saying. Now, of course, there is this, and maybe black, sacks the queen or something. Maybe even doesn't take, like, maybe that's even the best. Or knight b5, knight c7, something like this. But Hikaru somehow survives the initial stage of this game and is just, like, okay somehow. Like, he's worse, don't get me wrong. But if there's anybody who's going to win a position like this, it's Hikaru. Wesley is shooting all his pawns forward. b4, a6 there, bishop g5. And around this moment, the strangest thing begins to happen. Okay? Wesley just continues just chomping down the trees. He's up a pawn. Black's king is in the center. But apparently there was a better way to do all of this. Like apparently knight d4, knight c6, e6, bishop d5 was crushing for Wesley. +5. Hikaru fighting back against Wesley. And now we have this move. Rook d8. Rook d8, and all of this by Wesley, unnecessary. Keep the queen on the board, let Hikaru's king run over here, and begin firing f4 and f5 and h4 and h5 and e6 and just going forward. Knight c6 will live there forever. I guess something about the position irked Wesley. He didn't like all of these opportunities for black to guard the king, instead finding a way to play rook d8 and straight up just winning a queen. Getting to this endgame of queen versus rook and knight. Not only queen versus rook and knight, white also has an extra pawn. Look at the eval bar. Not only look at the eval bar for right there, look at the eval bar right now. Bishop e5 and bishop d5 not possible due to bishop f4. This is unreal. Now, by the way, Wesley could have also gone for this position. Even this position, considering that Hikaru must win this game, is not the worst thing in the world. But he got queen f3, and this is the best position Hikaru's had the entire game. It's now equal, and Hikaru has a rook and a knight for a queen. This is completely insane. Hikaru is about to complete the impossible comeback. There's a fork on d2. Now there's not. Knight c5 back, queen c3. All sorts of various nastiness things going on here. Rook e4, they're not going to repeat moves. Rook d4, don't repeat. Bishop goes back to f6. Rook d7, bishop c4. All right. There's going to be something here. Got to be something. Oh my goodness, I keep doing that because I keep turning off the lines. And the shuffling continues. Wesley chips away. Remember, Wesley has to not lose. Hikaru must win. That is the only option. He's got the knight. His king is relatively safe, but always being harassed. All right, that's it. Wesley's trying to get in there a little bit. Hikaru's going to try to win the g-pawn, and he does. He wins the g-pawn. He is now actually up equal, on material for the first time this game, but here come the checks. Queen goes back to g3. That knight on e8 has to move, but it can't. If it moves, I get to your king. I will get to your king on either side of this board. You have to find a way to defend yourself. Time is ticking, by the way. Both guys have about 5 seconds here. Hikaru desperately looking to get to the king, but he can't. Here comes the knight, but now the queen is going to be able to attack both the knight and the king and the bishop. How is Hikaru saving this? How are all 3 of his pieces surviving this? He just picks off Wesley's second to last pawn. The checks keep rolling in. The queen infiltrates the c6. Oh my goodness, but Wesley's going to win the c7 pawn or the f7 pawn. He gets to the king. That's why the king had to stay back. Suddenly, white is winning once again. Hikaru's rook and king are too far disconnected, and he's about to lose on time, but instead of losing on time, he blunders a geometric motif, and he blunders his rook! He blunders his rook! And he resigns. And Hikaru has also been knocked out of the Chess.com Global Championship. It's Wesley So versus Nihal Sarin for a grand prize of $200,000 beginning tomorrow, only on twitch.tv/chess, youtube.com/I think chess or chess.com. But it doesn't matter. 12 p.m. Eastern. We say goodbye for now to Anish Giri and Hikaru Nakamura in heartbreaking, devastating fashions as Hikaru climbed all the way back in this game in the most unreal gladiator-like style. But he just couldn't overcome the queen, the weaknesses on his king, and the low time. Wesley advances to the finals, as does Nihal Sarin. I will see you all tomorrow. Get out of here.